Hey friends, welcome to part 2 of our tutorial on deploying a WordPress website on AWS. In the first part, we set up our WordPress site using Amazon EC2 for hosting and Amazon RDS for the database. Now we are going to take it a step further by improving scalability, reliability, and performance. In this video, we'll configure an Amazon application load balancer to efficiently distribute income traffic across multiple EC2 instances, ensuring high availability and fault tolerance. We'll also integrate Amazon Route 53, an AWS powerful DNS service, to manage our domain and route traffic to our WordPress application smoothly. Lastly, we're going to secure our website with a free SSL certificate by using Amazon Certificate Manager. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a more flexible and scalable WordPress setup on AWS, ready to handle increasing traffic with ease. Let's dive in. So make sure you start with the first part of this tutorial, which I'll put the link in the description below, and then come back to the second part. Step 1, we're going to create an application load balancer. Now here we're going to create a load balancer to point to our EC2 instance. To configure your load balancer, in the left menu, click on Load Balancers. Then here click on Create Load Balancer. Now here we have load balancer types. We have Application Load Balancer, Network Load Balancer, and Gateway Load Balancer. We're going to choose Application Load Balancer. So click on Create. Enter a name of your load balancer. I'll name it WP-LB. For scheme, choose Internet Facing. The internet facing will route requests from clients to targets over the internet. Next, for the IP address type, choose IPv4 if your client uses IPv4 addresses to communicate to the load balancer. You can also choose dual stack if your client uses both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses to communicate with the load balancer. You also have dual stack without public IPv4 if your clients use only IPv6 addresses to communicate with the load balancer. I'm going to select IPv4. For the network configuration, select the VPC that you used for your EC2 instance. So here, only VPCs with an internet gateway are available for selection, so we are good here. For mappings, select at least 2 availability zones and 1 subnet per zone. But here, select the availability zone in which your EC2 instance has been created. You can verify this by going to your EC2 instance. And here we have availability zone as US East 1D. So make sure you select this one. Here I'm going to choose US East 1D. The subnet will automatically be selected for each availability zone. And I'll choose 2 more. For security group, we'll not use the default one. Let's create a new security group. Click on Create a new security group. Enter a security group name. I'll name it WP Load Balancer Security Group. So here, make sure your default VPC is selected. Now for the inbound rules, we're going to create 2 new rules. The first one is HTTP. So select here HTTP with a source to anywhere. And then the second one is HTTPS with a source to anywhere. Keep outbound rules as default. Now next, we're going to use a tag. A tag is a label that you assign to an AWS resource. Now for key, I'll enter name. Then for value, I'll enter load balancer security group. Then click on Create a security group. Now go back to the application load balancer and select the new security group. This one here. Now next, under listeners and routing, we're going to create a new target group. Now a listener is a process that checks for connection requests using the ports and the protocol you configure. Here the protocol is HTTP and the port is 80. Now for the action, click on Create Target Group. Choose instances as target type. Enter the target group name, and name it WP site target group. And then here select the default VPC, keep the rest as default, and then click next. Now for the register target, select our existing EC2 instance and then click on include as pending below. Now once the EC2 instance is added to the review targets, as you can see here, then click create targets group. Now back to the application load balancer, let's select our new WP site target group. Now here we can optimize our load balancer by integrating Amazon CloudFront distribution for performance and availability, and AWS Web Application Firewall for security, of course with additional costs. I'm gonna leave this for now so we won't get any additional charges. Now keep the rest as default. Now lastly, let's review the load balancer configurations. As you can see here, we've created one load balancer with an internet-facing load balancer, one security group, a network mapping with one VPC and 3 availability zones, and one targets group. Now here, the target group will be associated to the load balancer and the EC2 instance will be added to the target group. So make sure that the EC2 instance is healthy. And as you can see here, the load balancer is active. Now let's test our load balancer. To do that, copy the DNS name of the load balancer, this one here. I'm going to copy and open it in a new tab. And as you can see, we can now access our WordPress site from the load balancer DNS. Here we have our WP load balancer that we created. Now, if I go back to my WordPress dashboard and click on Visit Site, you can see that my website is still accessible from this public IP, which is not good. Now, to improve security, what we need to do next is to edit the security group so that our application load balancer can only be accessed from HTTP and HTTPS traffic through the application load balancer security group and not from all IP addresses. Now to do so, go back to the EC2 console, click on security group, copy the ID of the load balancer security group, this one here, LB security group, and then select the security group attached to the EC2 instance. This one here, WP security group. Now once it's selected, scroll down here and click on inbound rules. Then click on edit inbound rules. Now here we're going to create 2 new rules which only allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic from our load balancer security group. Here we have SSH to anywhere. Then we're going to add HTTP. I'll select HTTP and then paste the security group ID here. Next, I'll select HTTPS, then the source custom, and then paste the security group ID here. Then click Save Rules. Now let's check if it's working. If I go to my public IP address, it says the site can't be reached. But when I try to access it from the load balancer, let me copy again the load balancer DNS and paste it in a new tab. And there it is. Now we are allowing the traffic only from the load balancer. Now the next step, we're going to add a custom domain to our WordPress website using Amazon Route 53. If you already have a Route 53 domain, you can easily connect your custom domain to your website by just selecting your custom domain you purchased from Route 53. But if you are not using Amazon Route 53 to manage your domain, you can easily add a custom domain managed by a third-party DNS provider. Now to do that, we're going to create a public hosted zone, which is a container that holds information about how you want to route traffic on the internet for a specific domain. Then after we create a hosted zone, we're going to create records that specify how you want to route traffic for the domain and the subdomains. Now first, let's create the public hosted zone. Now back to the AWS Management Console, navigate to Route 53. Now here we're going to choose Create Hosted Zones. Then click Get Started. Now here enter the name of your domain. I will add my domain here, which is a domain that I purchased from hostinger.com. Next, for type, I will select Public Hosted Zone and then click on Create Hosted Zone. Now by default, you will have two records for your domain, these two here. Now we're going to select the NS, which stands for Name Server Record. This will determine the location of your domain and help you manage the mapping of your domain. Now once you select the Name Server Record, now in the record details, we're going to add these four name servers, these ones here. We're going to add them to our domain provider so that the provider can know where is our DNS hosted. Now go to your DNS provider's website and add the name servers to your DNS settings. I'll open my domain provider, which is Hostinger, and then go to the DNS settings and then go to name servers. Then I'll copy the name server value from Amazon Route 53. Let me go ahead and do that. Now once added, let's create a record that specifies how you want to route traffic for the domain, so that when anyone opens our domain URL, it will show the WordPress website from the load balancer. Now click up here, Create Record. Keep the record name blank. Here we have various record types. Make sure you select type A, which is route traffic to an IPv4 address and some AWS resources. Enable alias here. Then select route traffic to alias to application and classic load balancer. Here select your region where you have created your load balancer. In my case, it's North Virginia, which is US East 1. And then select our WordPress application load balancer, this one here. And then keep everything as default and click on Create Records. Now lastly, we are going to create another record to migrate traffic from www to our domain, okay? So if anyone adds www in front of our domain, it will not show an error, rather it will direct to our main domain. Now let's go ahead and create another record. Now here the record name, enter www. Now for the record type, let's select again type A. Enable alias. Then select route traffic to alias to another record in this hosted zone. Okay. Now here select the record created previously, this one here, and then click Create Record. Alright, we've added our custom domain. The next step, we're going to set up a free AWS SSL certificate to secure our domain name. Now to do that, let's go to the ACM, AWS Certificate Manager, to request a free SSL certificate for our domain. Back to the AWS Management Console, navigate to ACM. Then for the certificate type, choose Request a Public Certificate, this one here. Click Next. In the domain name section, type your domain name. We're going to add another name. Choose Add Another Name to this certificate. Then type asterisk dot, then the name of your domain. Now for the validation method, choose DNS validation. Lastly, for the key algorithm, select the default RCA key. Scroll down and click Request. we have successfully requested the certificate. It will be in pending validation status. It will take 3 to 5 minutes to validate. Okay, as we're waiting for the validation, let's create a DNS record in Amazon Route 53, which will add records to our hosted zone. Click Create Records in Route 53. Here, select your domains, then click Create Records. Now, next, we're going to add this SSL certificate to our load balancer. Go back to the EC2 console and then select Load Balancer. Click our existing load balancer. Scroll down and click on Listeners and Rules. Then click Add Listener. Here, select HTTPS as protocol and the port will be 443. Then select the target group we've created previously. This one here, WP Site Target Group. Now for the default SSL and TLS server certificate, select the certificate that will be applied as the default SSL and TLS server certificate. Let's select from AWS Certificate Manager, ACM, as the certificate source. Here, select your certificates and then click Add. Okay, next, let's redirect all traffic from HTTP to HTTPS. To do that, go back to EC2 console, then click on Load Balancer, and then select the existing load balancer. Then under Listeners and Rules, select HTTP with port 80. Then click here, Edit Rules. Now scroll down here and select the default listener rules. Then click on Action and then Edit Rule. Scroll down for the root actions, select Redirect to URL. Okay, now keep the protocol as HTTPS and then the port enter 443. Then click Save Changes. Now, before we test our website, let's go ahead and edit the WordPress configuration file to allow proper HTTPS request. Go back to your EC2 instance console, select your instance, WP instance, click on Connect, then choose EC2 Instance Connect, then click Connect. Now, once you're connected, change the directory to access the website. Run the following command. Remember to edit the WP configuration file. We are going to use again Vim editor. Run the command sudo vim wp config.php. Okay, once we're inside the Vim editor, type I key to enter into insert mode. Then paste this following code. Now, this code will tell the server to use HTTPS protocol. I'll provide this code in the description below in the GitHub gist. Make sure you change the URL to your own domain name. Okay, once you're done, to save the changes and exit Vim editor, type escape key and then type column WQ. All right, now let's test our website. Let me check my domain. And there you go. As shown here, the website is operational, featuring AWS Application Load Balancer connected to the domain name through Amazon Route 53, along with the secure SSL certificate. This is perfect. Now that you have everything set up, you can start editing and customizing your WordPress website. I'm going to show you my final website. This is what I've built. As I mentioned earlier, there is always room for improvement. You can implement more features in this architecture in terms of performance, security, and more. Now, before I go, a very important reminder: if you have been following along, let's go delete everything that we used in this video. Of course, everything should be in the free tier, but just in case, you don't want any surprise bills at the end of the month. So I'll walk you through how to delete these resources. First, let's terminate the EC2 instance. Go to the EC2 instance console, click on Action, then click Terminate and delete the instance. Now it's shutting down. Next, let's delete the RDS database. Go to the RDS console, select your database, click on Action, then click Delete. Now, as expected, we cannot delete this database because it has a deletion protection option enabled. To be able to delete it, we need to modify it and disable deletion option. So click on Modify, then scroll down. Then here, disable deletion protection. Click continue, then click modify database. Now let's try again and delete the RDS database. To confirm deletion, enter delete me. Next, let's delete the snapshots created from the database. Next, we need to delete all the security groups. Let's start with the one associated to the database. Next, let's delete the security group associated to the EC2 instance. Now let's go ahead and delete the load balancer. Now let's delete the load balancer security group. Next, let's delete the target group. Now before we delete the hosted zone, let's first delete the records inside the hosted zone. And lastly, delete the SSL certificate. And that's it. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more AWS tutorial. Let me know in the comment sections if you ran into any issues or have suggestions for future topics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.